Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you the top 5 books that I read this summer. So the way this video will be structured is that I'll talk about all the books that I read in the months of June, July, and August. And then at the end, in no particular order, I'll wrap up the ones that really stood out for me. I feel like this summer was a bit of a meh reading month. I felt like there were a lot of misses and there were only a few that really stood out. So I think when I go through all of the books that I read, I think it'll be easy to tell which ones I enjoyed and all those things. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So starting off with June, I first read The Night in the Moth by Rachel Gillig, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. The Martha's Vineyard Beach and Book Club by Martha Hall Kelly, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I listened to the audiobook for The Truths We Hold by Kamala Harris, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Moving on to July, I first read Horse by Geraldine Brooks, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Under the Same Stars by Libba, Bray, which I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And lastly, The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. And lastly, moving on to August, I first read Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Northwoods by Daniel Mason, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenenz, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Orbital, which I gave 1 star. And lastly, Tangled, the series, volume 1 through 4, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. So first up, I have Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. I've heard so many great things about this series and I was really excited to finally dive in. I read Assassin's Apprentice over the springtime, and so this is the sequel. Basically the premise of the story is we follow Fitz, who is the illegitimate son of the king in waiting, and we follow him basically from childhood into his into his 20s basically throughout this trilogy. But in this world there is some political intrigue. The kingdom that he lives in is being attacked by these ships, and then in addition to that there's also some sort of magical system where people can kind of use magic with their mind, and it kind of goes from there. This being the sequel, I can't really talk too much about it, but I really enjoyed this one. This one was very much a character study, I would say. It's made up of very kind of small moments that eventually build something bigger. There isn't, in terms of plot and for how big this book is, for being almost 700 pages, it is there's not really a lot happens until the end. Like I said, a lot of this is really built up of small moments between characters, ultimately building to something bigger. And so sometimes I felt like that made the pacing go a little bit slow at times, because I felt like not a lot happened, but I felt like everything that was happening in this one was so significant to something that was obviously building towards the end. And the ending, like I felt with Assassin's Apprentice, I felt like it was just really well done. It kept me on the edge of my seat. Like I literally read the last 250 pages in one day. We were traveling for the Outer Banks, so we were having a long car ride, so it was perfect. But yeah, this one was really fantastic. I thought it was really well done now, and I see why this series gets so much love. Fitz has to overcome so much pain and suffering, and what the author makes him go through is really heartbreaking. But I'm currently about 2/3 of the way through the final book, and yeah, I'm excited to finally have read this series. Next, I have a historical fiction, which I feel like I haven't been reading a lot recently, but this is one that really stood out, and it is the Martha's Vineyard Beach and Book Club by Martha Hall Kelly. This book is very interesting. So at the beginning of the book, we follow this woman in present day who has gone to Martha's Vineyard, and she has kind of signed up for classes for this artist that lives on the island, but she has ulterior motives for actually why she is there. Basically, she wants to learn more about her mother, who recently passed away, had a lot of information about this this artist, and we kind of follow her story of going to the island and also getting the story that is told to her by the artist herself, who lived on the island at the house that they're currently at. And she tells them the story of the family that lived there, the 2 sisters that lived there during World War II. So this one kind of is told in the dual perspective. I would say it's maybe like 90% kind of told in the World War II timeline, and I really enjoyed it. I loved the dynamics between the sisters. I really loved how it was basically what women did at home in America during this time, which I feel like is not really something that's covered in a lot of historical fiction or just in history in general. And I didn't know that Martha's Vineyard was used as kind of like a military base, and there was the issues of spies and German U-boats being around, which was really interesting. And this book deals with all of that. There is a spy amidst, there's maybe a possible U-boat sighting, so there's kind of this all other stuff going on in addition to the kind of, you know, World War II setting, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, this one was just really unique and fun, and I really loved the setting, so it really was a standout for me, and I felt like this book is just very summery. Next, I have a romance, which was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenenz, and this one I really enjoyed. I think this is my favorite romance book of the year so far, and I read our Just for the Summer last year, and I really enjoyed it. So this is her newest book. It follows Samantha and Xavier, and it kind of has that kind of sunshine grumpy like trope going on. So think of Jessica Day and Nick Miller from New Girl. That's basically the dynamic here. But basically they have like the one perfect first date, and from there the Samantha ends up the next day literally ends up moving across the country because she has to go help take care of her mom who has early onset dementia. And this book kind of follows just their long distance relationship. And I really like this. I felt like it was a very different take on a lot of the romance tropes, and I feel like some of the issues that I have with romance books in general is the third act, like miscommunication or just kind of things that are thrown in to create conflict for the characters. But in this case, I felt like it was all of the kind of problems or struggles that they had were warranted. I felt like, you know, these are challenges that people will have in this type of long distance relationships, such as financial issues of being able to afford to fly across the country to see each other, all those things and the sacrifices that have to come with that, I felt like was really well done. And I feel like kind of traditional with this author is there's always some sort of hard-hitting like backstory or kind of sad backstory for the characters. So they involved like parental abuse and like domestic violence, but then also kind of dealing with a family member who, you know, has dementia. It did get to the point though where there was like so many bad things happening that when I was listening to the audiobook for this, I was just like, Jesus, like, oh my God, like it felt like a little bit unbelievable. But regardless, like I said, I really enjoyed this, and I felt like this was a really well thought out, really meaningful kind of romance book. Next, this was one of my most anticipated new releases of this year, and I'm glad to say it didn't disappoint, and it is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is her newest book that came out. Sorry, that is Willow. She likes to sit right under me and roll around, so she's currently just sprawled out on her back right now living her best life. But basically this is her newest kind of romantasy duology. I really was a fan of the Shepherd King duology, and so I was really excited for this one. This follows Six, or what's her name, Seven? Yeah, her name is Six, and she is kind of a seer basically in this world where she lives in this cathedral, and she is among 5 other women who are also seers, are drowned where they can kind of predict futures for people and make predictions from there. But as her other seers start disappearing, she teams up with this grumpy knight, and it kind of goes from there. I really love this. I felt like the atmosphere was really spot on. That's what I really loved about One Dark Window, was how atmospheric it was. The vibes were really there, and this book just really creates such a great picture of this world, and I love the setting of the mystery of trying to figure out what's going on, who can we trust, and I really love the ending on this one as well. I feel like this one is a little bit more heavy on the romantasy compared to the One Dark Window like Shepherd King duology, and I enjoyed that. I don't mind like a little bit of romantasy. I wouldn't say it's like Sarah J Maas level romantasy, but it was definitely turned up a little bit, so I would say it's like a medium spicy pepper, as opposed to kind of maybe jalapeno with One Dark Window, a little bit spicier than jalapeno. I can't handle spicy peppers, so I don't know what would be the equivalent between a jalapeno and a ghost pepper. I don't know, but I really enjoyed this. Like I said, my husband read this and he really enjoyed the fantasy aspect, but he wasn't so happy about the kind of heavier romantasy. So if that's not something you like, you may not enjoy it as much. But like I said, I really enjoyed it. I was really lost in this world, and I loved the characters. I loved the romance. I loved the mystery element and the ending. I'm really excited to see what happens. And there's a character in here that reminds me a lot about reminds me a lot of Olaf from Frozen. If you read this, you'll know, but that also kind of made it fun as well. So yeah, definitely really excited for the sequel coming out, hopefully next year. And lastly, this is another 5-star read that really I think will be definitely making my favorites of 2025, and it is Atmosphere, like by Jenkins Reid. This book, I haven't cried reading a book in a really long time, and this book broke me. I remember just like sobbing, and we were in the family room and my husband looks up and he's like, "Are you okay?" And Willow was concerned, like looking at me like, "Mom, are you okay?" So it was, this book really hit me hard, and I think it is my favorite Jenkins Reid book. I really love Daisy Jones and the Six and the Seven of Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but this one I think really takes the cake. It follows a woman who is wanting to become an astronaut, so we follow her story of being in the astronaut training program and where she eventually falls in love with another astronaut. This book is kind of told in somewhat of a dual storyline, where we have the present day and also the past storyline leading up to essentially the events where the book starts out. And so she is kind of the comp of mission control. She's communicating on Earth to her fellow astronaut peers that are, you know, up in space, and something catastrophic happens, and that's where we're kind of going, essentially kind of building up to the story to there. And it was so well done. It was, you can tell a lot of research. Sorry, Willow is just wiggling around, but you can tell a lot of research went into this one in terms of, you know, actually understanding what it takes to be an astronaut, the, you know, terminology, all that stuff. Like, it just, there was so much background information that went into this, and it was really a heartbreaking, beautifully written love story. I feel like this, even though I said I really like the traditional of Say You'll Remember Me, it's just like, I feel like a very traditional romance. I feel like this is ultimately a romance story as well, but it was just beautiful, heartbreaking. Like I said, I haven't cried reading a book in a really long time, and this one really got to me. I recommended it to my sister as well, so it's just a beautiful read, and I honestly think it's going to be one of my favorites of the year, if not within the last few years. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what books were some of your favorite this summer and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.